All right. Any more questions? Any holdups? Any concerns? Okay, I will repeat it one more time. If you have to go, please make sure that you schedule an appointment with me. Do not do it last minute because I'm starting to not really give any chances. If you don't pull through, I'm not going to pull through for you. All right? Like I said, I'm a student first. All right, can you see?
Yeah, I can totally see.
All right, cool.
Okay, so we're going to hand out our outline. The library was out of Staples, but it's only 2 pages, so you should be fine.
Who's gonna keep time?
I'll do time. Alright, everyone ready? Everyone ready? Okay. Hey everyone, my name is Steven.
I'm Nicole.
And our theory is communication accommodation theory. So a little background, it was developed by this people man right here, Harold Giles, in 1973. He was originally from England, where he was a chair of psychology at the University of Bristol, but now he works at the University of California at Santa Barbara as a chair. He originally called it the speech accommodation theory, but later changed it to include nonverbal communication as well as verbal communication. And the theory is rooted from social identity theory, which was developed by Henry Cashwell and John Turner to address intergroup stereotyping and prejudice, and we'll go into that a little bit later. So, a little bit about communication accommodation theory. CAT is based on the premise that when 2 people interact, they modify their speech, vocal patterns, and gestures to accommodate the other person. So, for example, if I was talking to Nicole here, I would use informal language such as "Hey, what's up?" I'll refer to her as Nicole. But if I was talking to a professor like Dr. Bell, I would be formal. My nonverbal communication would be very limited.
Yeah, and it's a lot different than when you interact with a friend group rather than when you're interacting with someone of a higher status. Like we would use nicknames or something, but you would be a lot more formal, as Steven said. And the theory also incorporates nonverbal communication. So that would, if you're talking to a professor or a friend, like the same scenario, but your posture, your eye contact, things like that, where it's not verbal but it's visible, that is a big effective part of this theory as well.
Okay, so the reasons to accommodate another person person would be to evoke their approval, to achieve efficient communication, to assert a dominant position, and to maintain a positive social identity.
Okay, so there are 4 assumptions of this theory. And the first one is that speech and behavioral similarities and dissimilarities exist in all conversations. So this will determine the extent of accommodation between the person you're talking to and yourself. And so what determines this, it could be where you're from, professional background, cultural background, how would you relate to them, and how would that further the conversation. The second assumption of the theory is the manner in which we perceive the speech and the behaviors of another will determine how we evaluate a conversation. So this has to do a lot with perception and evaluation. And in a conversation, perception is the process of attending to and interpreting a message. So when you're talking with someone, you could, an example of this would be if you keep asking them questions for them to reveal more and more, and that would, depending on what they answer, that'll make you think, well, do I want to keep talking to this person? Are we going to have future interactions? Do we have the same way of thinking? And then the evaluation process would be judging the conversation as a whole after. So perception evaluation is the first step of accommodation. So you're really, really trying to figure out if you would like future interaction. The third assumption is language and behaviors impart information about social status and group belonging. The language we often use will reflect the person of the higher social status or the dominant figure. So if you're in a group, a good example would be using slang. And the fourth assumption would be accommodation varies in its degree of appropriateness, and norms guide the accommodation process. So I'm sure you guys have heard the term norms before, and they're expectations of behaviors that individuals feel should or should not be present in a conversation. So if you're, again, if you're talking to someone of a higher status, you would probably be the most likely one to accommodate. That's what the theory is trying to explain. So if you're talking to an elder, if you're talking, again, if you're talking with a teacher, or anyone that you would be in a lower status to, you would be more likely to accommodate to what they're saying, rather than argue with them and interrupt them. Okay, and that brings us to, first we have some important vocab, which would be in-groups and out-groups. In-groups and out-groups, so an in-group is a group where you feel a sense of belonging, and you get something positive out of it. An out-group is where a person feels they don't belong. So these really come out of the social identity theory, so and that's part of the communication and accommodation theory. So Tajfel and Turner believed that it was very natural for, if you found yourself in a group where you felt that you didn't belong, it was natural for you to take yourself out of that group and find an in-group where you get more out of, and where you feel more comfortable. And so that's the basis of in-groups, out-groups, and it's a very big part of this theory. So going on, Stephen's gonna.
Yes, so in communication accommodation theory, we have 3 ways to adapt or 3 ways to accommodate. They are convergence, divergence, and over-accommodation. The first one is convergence, and it's defined as a strategy whereby individuals adapt to each other's communicative behaviors. So it's pretty much what we explained in the introduction with formal language and titles and informal language and nicknames. But it's all based on attraction, which just isn't about how good looking the other person is. It's about the liking, charisma, and credibility of the other person, but most importantly, the possibility of future interaction. So let's say, for example, I joined this class, and I know I'm going to be in this class for the rest of the semester, and in the same exact seat. So my interactions with my classmates and with my professor is going to be based on the fact that I'm going to be seeing them for the rest of the semester.
So if, all right, let's say it's first day of class. How many of you, I know it's really natural when you come in and you're looking for a seat, or if you're already sitting and you're looking for where you want to sit next time, the group that appeals to you would be what means in the sense of attractions. So let's say if I play in a lot of sports teams, I'm going to look around the room and I'll be able to pick out who else is an athlete and whatnot, and that would be the more appealing group to me. So if we were to do a group project, or if I wanted to pick people to sit next to, it would be more likely for me to try to get in with their group.
Right, so that's a high level attraction. However, if I join this class by accident and I know I'm going to be dropping it in the next day, there's a low level attraction. So all of my low level of attraction, so my interactions, will be based upon the fact that I'm not going to see them anymore. Okay, so go back. So another point of convergence is indirect stereotyping, which is imposing outdated or rigid assumptions of a cultural group upon a member of that group. So to illustrate that, we have an activity. So what's going to happen is we're going to go around and everyone is going to get a card.
So keep it face down on your desk and don't look at it yet, and we will further.
So we're going to hand out a card to you, and then don't look at it yourself. And it's in Sharpie, so you might be able to see through. So try not to see through the card. You're going to hold it face down on your desk. Alright, so everyone has a card? Alright, so we're all going to wake up and stand up, and you're going to go across the room and you're going to try and find someone. You're going to show that person your card without looking at it yourself. That person will then give you 5 statements to try and guess, for you to try and guess what is on your card. So let's.
So don't use geographical questions or.
Okay, so this is to illustrate. So this is to illustrate indirect stereotyping, which is going to be, not very nice. So if you don't want to participate, you don't have to. It's to show how we stereotype in our everyday conversations without realizing. So this card I have is Hispanic, but I don't see that it says Hispanic. Nicole sees it. So she would say something like,
how did you get here? Or like, how did you make it to America?
And I would be like, oh, maybe I'm, foreign. Or she could say, you're typically maybe loud, or, large families, things like that. So, everyone stand up, let's participate.
Sure.
You can if you want. Yeah, or you can hold on your forehead.
How are you guys doing? Did you get it yet? What questions have you? Okay. Good, yeah. So, did everyone mostly get the question? Was anyone a little hesitant before asking?
how'd the activity go? Was it a little iffy at first?
Well, were you afraid of like offending anyone or how?
Same. No. All right.
Okay.
So
Well.
we stole this activity from.
And for see, you might not be afraid of offending someone, but that's a lot how convergence and divergence over accommodation works. When you might not know you're offending the person. Like, we could naturally use these stereotypes every day, but someone else might hear this, or you might talk to someone else, and they're going to take it a lot differently. So the video that inspired us, we are going to show real quick.
From my favorite show, The Office. So let's take a minute to watch that.
I want you to take a card, put it on your forehead. Don't look at the card. I want you to take a card, I want you to put it on your forehead, and take a card, any card. And I want you to treat other people like the race that is on their forehead, okay? So everybody has a different race. Nobody knows what their race is. So I want you to really go for it. Because this is real. You know, this isn't just an exercise. This is real life. And I have a dream that you will really let the sparks fly. Get it done.
There's this great Chris Rock bit about how streets named after Martin Luther King tend to be more violent. I'm not going to do it, but it's...
Oh, this is a good one.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Great.
I admire your culture's success in America.
Thank you.
Come on, Olympics, there's something right here. Slavery versus the Holocaust, come on.
Well, that's so
It's
forbidden.
gonna percolate. No. Well, that was an inadvertent. We didn't actually plan that.
Lots of cultures eat rice. Doesn't help me. Shalom. I'd like to apply for a loan.
That's nice. Wait.
What could you mean? Something stereotypical so I can get it really quick.
Okay, I like your food.
Outback Steakhouse. I'm Australian, mate.
Pam, come on. I like your food. No, come on. Stir the pot. Stir the melting pot. Pam, let's do it. Get on. Let's get real.
If I have to do this, based on stereotypes that are totally untrue, that I do not agree with, you would maybe not be a very good driver.
Oh, man, I'm a woman.
You want to go to the beach?
Sure.
You want to get high?
No?
I think you do, Mom.
Okay. It's good. You need to push it. You know, you need to go a little bit further. All right. Well, okay. Kelly, how are you?
I have the longest meeting.
Oh, welcome to my convenience store. Would you like some cookie? Well, I have some very delicious cookies. Only 99 cents plus tax. Try my cookie. Try my cookie. Try my cookie. Try my...
Okay. So yeah, we took that the activity from there. And like to see, you know, stereotyping comes in all different ways. And Pam was like, oh, well, maybe you're not a good driver. And then Dwight was like, Shalom, can I have a bank loan? And it was...
And so what I was saying was, at the end, do you see how stereotyping, it's not the same to everyone, or you don't know if you're being offensive, or, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So on to the ways to adapt. So divergence is a strategy used to accentuate the verbal and nonverbal difference between communicators. So it's the opposite of convergence, which we just went over. And instead of communicators trying to accommodate to each other, no effort is really made. So this isn't a disagreement. It isn't. It's. So if you diverge in a conversation, okay, let's say you visit a foreign country. If you go there and you're talking English, or they're not going to accommodate to you. Like, the people around you aren't going to speak English because you're speaking English. Like, they're going to go on living, like, speaking their language. And has a lot to do with divergence. They're not going to converge with you because it doesn't mean anything to them. And so it's a good example between a boss and an employee. So here we're talking about the social status roles again. So in most cases, if you go and talk to your fellow employees, you're going to talk about your family, your kids, what you're doing later, and all stuff. And then when you talk to your boss, you're not going to speak about your personal life. It's going to be mainly work-based. And so that has to do a little bit about divergence, excuse me.
And the last way to adapt is over-accommodation. And over-accommodation is a term attributed to the behavior of a person who is acting from good intentions, but is perceived as demeaning or patronizing. So we have three different types of over-accommodation: sensory, dependency, and intergroup. Sensory is when a person overly adapts to a person who's perceived as limited in some way. So, for example, if someone is deaf and you go up to them and you start shouting to them when you're trying to talk, when in reality they have a hearing aid and it makes it easy. Fine.
Oh, I think it's her phone ringing.
Oh.
Okay, go on.
Where was I? Okay, so the person is deaf and you're shouting at them in order for them to hear you, but they have a hearing aid and they can hear you perfectly fine. That's sensory over-accommodation. Dependency over-accommodation is when the speaker places the listener in a lower status role and the listener appears dependent on the speaker. So a personal example I have on that is my biggest pet peeve is when old ladies call me sweetie. I don't like it. So when I hear them call me sweetie, I hear it as listen to me because I'm older and more experienced, and heed my advice. That's what I hear when I hear sweetie. But in reality, she just called me sweetie just like I would call a friend bro or something. So that's dependency over accommodation.
Another example could be if you're talking to an upperclassman and they make it very clear that they are better than you, they know more than you, they're in a higher social role than you, then you're going to depend on them. So like freshman versus senior. That's another example you could use.
Right. And the last over-accommodation is intergroup over-accommodation. Is when the speaker lumps the listener into a group without recognizing individual uniqueness. So that can be like stereotyping. It could be on any level. Example we have is political level. So say, for example, you tell someone you're a college student, they say, oh, you're a college student? Well, then you must be a liberal. And if you're a liberal, then you must want free things. Or you tell them that you're a Republican. Oh, well, you're a Republican, then you must hate gay people. Well, just because you're a college student, and a majority of college students are liberals, doesn't mean that you yourself are a liberal. And just because you're a Republican and Republicans tend to favor traditional marriages, doesn't mean that you hate gay people.
So your individuality is overlooked and you're lumped into the same group as someone that you might not be exactly the same as.
So that wraps up the three types of over-accommodation for the three ways to adapt. Next, we are going to talk about integration. The integration is socio-psychological because you're finding groups that appeal to the way you think and leaving out groups that don't appeal to that way. The context is cultural because your background is important to understanding this theory and what in-groups you join. And the approach to knowing is positivistic and empirical because the goal of positivistic is to construct laws governing human interactions.
Alright, so a little bit on the critique of the theory. The scope, well, let's start with the logical consistency. So it has little scholarly criticism, but some theorists do believe that the conversations, like, we're talking about every aspect of our conversations in this theory. And the theorist, Giles, he boils it down to main things like convergence and divergence. And some of the theorists, which are listed on the board, they believe that it shouldn't be boiled down that easily to these simplistic of ideas. So they posed a couple questions, like, all right, so what happens if someone might diverge and converge in the same conversation? Notice how we didn't really touch on that? Well, that's not really it's not incorporated into the theory yet, and they haven't studied that. So if that happens, if convergence and divergence are happening at the same time, would there be consequences for the speaker or listener? And what influence could race or ethnicity have when this happens? So some theorists may even assume that the conversation starts out between two rational people. That's not always what happens. That's not always the case. Not every conversation is step by step. So you could start a conversation with someone and it could already begin with them not accommodating to you. They could be in a bad mood. It could be related to past issues. That's not really explained well in the theory, is what these other theorists are critiquing. So we talked a little about the nonverbal communication. That wasn't always in this theory. So a lot of times when you look at the studies, it leaves that part out. So then it's room to like advance the study while incorporating nonverbal communications to see what the outcome would be when considering that. So onto the scope. It's very broad because over the years it's became more and more complex due to the need for extensive research in order to apply to a lot of different situations or cultures. As you'll see when we talk a little bit about our articles, it applies to policing, it applies to TV shows, and which I'll talk a little bit more about in the heroism, and it's very strong in heuristic value. And the theory has been, like I said before, it's incorporated into a lot. And they listed psychology, criminal justice, and even on the internet. So that's where nonverbal comes in. Well, not nonverbal, but it's applying to a lot more as the theory expands, and has a long-lasting scholarly value. So it definitely passes the test of time. And we know this because, as we said from the very beginning, it was originally called speech accommodation theory, and then it was changed to communication accommodation theory, which was created from social identity theory. So it hasn't just been one basic theory. Everything keeps adding to it, and it keeps progressing. So it's definitely passing the test of time, and it will definitely be expanded more in the future.
All right. So that wraps that part up. Does anyone have any questions before we move on to our articles?
Do you think you guys can just give the class just a stronger explanation about divergence? Because I feel like you were just getting there, but you were kind of now starting to merge it back into convergence.
Sure. So if you want to go back to those
Yeah.
slides. So divergence, it's the opposite of convergence. So say for example, first day of college, and we're trying to find new friends to meet because no one from high school is here. So I'm noticing groups to join. I find a group that I think will be, I'll fit in. We get food, start making conversations, and I find out that they all smoke cigarettes, and I have bad asthma. So what I'll do is I'll start diverging to, kind of separate myself from them. So I'll say I can make there's lots of different tactics. I can make like little comments like, "Oh, smoking kills," or I can just get up and leave, or yeah.
So yeah, it makes you, it forces you to display divergent behaviors to move yourself away from that group, and then that's where a little bit where in-groups and out-groups might come in. So like we explained, that would be kind of part, and you would feel uncomfortable in that situation. And if you don't find yourself with a group of people that thinks the way, if you're not attracted to the way they're thinking, you're going to diverge, and you're going to want to find a different group.
Right.
Is that a little better?
Yeah. Do you guys think that divergence is just a method to protect social identity?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, for sure. We want to perceive, or we want to project a really positive social identity for ourselves. So I feel that we are willing to do a lot of things when in communication or when meeting new people. We want to come off like very attractive in our way of thinking and our social identity. So we do a lot of things to make sure of that.
All right. Any other questions? All right. So we'll go to my article first. You want to go to the slide?
Yeah.
So my article was called "To Accommodate or Not to Accommodate: Exploring Patient Satisfaction with Doctors' Accommodative Behavior During a Clinical Encounter." This study took place in 2016, and the goal was to understand accommodation between doctors and their patients. So what these researchers did was they went to a rural Ohio area. They had pencil and paper surveys with a Likert type scale, which is 1 for agree, 5 for strongly disagree. And they had a total of 310 participants. They took their participants from the waiting rooms of doctors' offices, and they asked them to basically rate their doctors' accommodative behaviors. So the 4 points that they touched upon was discourse management, emotional expression, interpretability, and interpersonal control. Discourse management deals with the level of respect of the doctor towards the patient, treating them like a human being. Emotional expression deals with how caring the doctor was, on an emotional level. Interpretability deals with how much effort the doctor made into making sure that the patient knew, what he was talking about. And interpersonal control dealt with how much initiative the doctor took into, with the patient's health. So, I noticed that maybe you gained a little weight today. Is there anything you want to talk about? Those kind of questions. So, with those 4 points, they found high levels of satisfaction when the doctor did accommodate in the first 3 points, but into interpersonal control, they found the survey showed that people equally liked it when doctors converged with patients and asked questions about their health, when the doctors diverged and focused on the reason why they adjusted it. So patients didn't like it when the doctors, pried into their privacy and asked them questions beyond like, I'm just here for a cold, don't ask me about my weight, those kind of things. So this study helps us understand how complex accommodation is. Like we said in the critiques, it's more than just about convergence or divergence. They can be both in the same interaction. The weaknesses of the study, when they interviewed, or the patients took a survey in the waiting room, they did it based on their last doctor's visit, which I'm not sure why they did this. Didn't make sense to me because I haven't been to the doctor in like months. I only go to the doctor when I need something. There could have been participants that just didn't remember, just filled it out randomly. Some other weaknesses that they noticed was when it comes to things like personal health, sometimes accommodation isn't the highest priority. So, my doctor just told me I have cancer, but he was a nice guy while he did it. No one cares about things like that when personal health is on the line. Yep, and that's my article.
Nice job, Stephen, with the article. Recently I was at the doctor's office, and this is interesting when you think about interpersonal communication and accommodation. So the doctor asked me, I told him, I was like, yes, I've been sick since after teaching my class on Tuesday, right? I told the doctor that. And within the next sentence, you know what the doctor said to me? He was like, do you work? And so he definitely wasn't accommodating nor listening to me. when it came to whatever you
Right,
know,
so he wasn't.
and this happens oftentimes with like patient physician's care. So you'll notice in communication, this is like health communication, you'll see a lot of articles that deal with these type of issues because in the medical field, you know, there's a lot of problems. So that's why they have a lot of these studies here using these type of theories to try to find ways to accommodate patients because oftentimes people are really dissatisfied with the type of service that they receive, at the doctor or like in that doctor's office or in the hospital. Has anybody else experienced anything like that in relation to kind of communication accommodation? No. No one's been to the doctor recently?
Well, you expect, I know if I was in that situation and they repeated the same question I just pretty much answered, I'd be like, I want to see a different doctor. Like, you're not listening to me, so I don't feel like I'm gonna get the best results or medicine.
Yeah.
I feel like just
It's a major
picturing
problem. There's no accommodation at all. Yeah, I tried to see if I could see a different doctor. They're like, it's gonna take some time, so we're not gonna be able to do that.
I think it's like slightly related, but when I was younger, I saw an eye doctor, and like obviously when you go to the doctor and they tell you like the diagnosis or anything like that, you want to question it, so you want to like double check and make sure and everything. And he basically told me like, my word is final. You can't be asking me questions like that, like like a bunch of like asinine comments like that. So I just left.
Right.
I literally got up in the middle of the visit and left and said I'm never going back.
Right, so yeah, going to the doctor's office is as much a medical thing as it is like a customer service kind of deal. Yeah.
I remember when I broke my hand, they had to do a bunch of X-rays, and they wanted me to turn it different ways, and I physically could not, because it was broken. He's like, oh no, it's fine, you can turn it. I can't turn it anymore. It's like, oh no, just do it. Trust me, you can hold it there. It's literally not moving. I'll use my other hand, it won't go. It gets stuck in that spot. They just didn't understand it. They were like, no, you can do it, you can do it. It physically won't go.
Right.
I don't know how much
So
more
they're
you
not
want.
really seeing that happening, I guess. So yeah, they're not accommodating to your needs. What was really great about having to do these articles with the presentation is we're really seeing how the theory applies to real life situations. Because if we were just to say this presentation and give you the definitions, give you a few examples, it wouldn't have really clicked as much. And when putting it in perspective of a doctor's office or like I'm going to go into in mine, I think it really helped. And I don't know if a lot of you guys felt the same way. But once we did the readings and wrote the bibliographies, it really did put the theory into perspective. So I did mine on police stops and interactions with Latino and white or non-Latino drivers, and it had to do with extensive policing and communication accommodation. So this was conducted in 2012, actually by our theorist Howard Giles, along with Daniel Lins, Doug Manila, and Michelle Lee Gomez. So they wanted to reveal if there's any truth behind the assumption that people of different ethnicities, in this case Latino, receive different treatments when in traffic stops. And this was analyzed through, they put the videos on the police cameras, dash cams. They went through a bunch of them from a time span, and they focused on one area, which was a pretty close percentage of Latinos and white people living, and they only used women, and they only used they excluded women, and they only used white officers. So they narrowed it down a lot, and so in these traffic stops, they did a content analysis of the footage, and they had 5 hypotheses. I'm not going to go through each one, but they mostly had to do with non-accommodation and accommodation, and they wanted to see what made a driver non-accommodative to the police officer, and what made a police officer accommodated or non-accommodated to the driver. And then they incorporated, did it have to do with extensive policing, in a lot of different instances. So I'm going to touch a little more on the methods, and before I get into the main results. So one of the biggest weaknesses of the study from the beginning, they got all this footage, like over 300 videos from the police department they were working with, but the police department handpicked them. So I thought the study was kind of flawed from the beginning, even though there's laws saying like the police department can't withhold videos, they should be all public record, but they did mention in the article that the police were able to handpick which ones were able to be looked at. So I thought that was kind of messing with the study in the first place. But all the videos they decided on, they went through a coding process, and they incorporated a lot of characteristics to focus on. So like conditions, amount of traffic, vehicle age, and number of occupants during the stop, and the driver's ethnicity, the primary officer's ethnicity, sex and age, and perception of the driver's accent. Like if the police officer went up to a car and they hear an accent, will they be less accommodating to this driver, or will they use more extensive policing or give out more tickets to them? So, so they use a lot of variables, accommodative and non-accommodative. So overall listening, respect, politeness, pleasantness, courteousness, approachability, and the non-accommodative factors were the driver's dismissiveness, the air of superiority, and the driver belligerence. So they did find that Latino drivers were stopped more often, and when it was darker and less traffic, and a newer vehicle with more passengers. So they did prove most of their hypotheses, but they didn't prove them, like overly prove them. It wasn't like, yes, like Latinos are targeted every day, all day. It was more like, okay, this hypothesis is partially proved. This hypothesis is half there, half not. And but the main thing I did get out of this is that the non-accommodative and accommodative factors, if a police officer went up to the car and was to begin with more accommodative, then the driver would be more accommodative. Or if the driver began with being non-accommodative, then the police officer was going to be non-accommodative. So it really depended. It became kind of neutral, the interaction, more of the times. And so I think that touches on briefly on this article. It was a lot. Does anyone have any questions with that? It was actually, they did a study before that with African American interactions too. So as I was saying before, so they start with African American, they're going on to Latino, and now they can do one with women, or they could keep going. So that's why it's so broad, the theory in general.
I'm sorry if I didn't hear this. What was the police department? Where was the police department from?
They didn't say. They left it anonymous. So they just said an area of this population of these ethnicities was studied. So they could also do different areas to find better results. I thought that was kind of a critique too, because it was only this one area.
Right.
So you'll find a lot of different treatments in certain geographical areas. Anything else?
Do you have can you tell us one of the specific hypotheses?
Yeah.
Questions that we can instead of that?
Yeah, I do. So
Or just like the main one that really touches the whole system.
well, the first one was that Latino drivers will experience more extensive policing and be issued more citations and arrests than white drivers. So that was proved. And the other one is more heavily accented Latino drivers. The more heavily accented they're judged to be, the more extensive policing or arrests they will receive, and the more non-accommodative officers will be.
That's just a hard research to do, because what if they just went to a town that was just populated 95% Latino?
Yeah,
And
I mean that's why they
obviously
picked
there's
like
gonna
an
be
even
more.
percentage too.
Yes, that's like a hard study to do and not make it biased in some way, because there's no perfect population with 50-50 or whatever.
Exactly.
Who's talking? Sorry, who said that?
Jonathan?
Jonathan? Oh, okay. I couldn't hear the voice. Oh, okay. Hi, Jonathan. Sorry.
Yeah, so this one was 43% Hispanic and 48% white. So they did find a population that was almost pretty even, but you're right, none of them are perfect. That is another flaw in this study, or finding the results of this study. And the other one, it was based mostly, the whole article was on non-accommodation and accommodation between the driver and the officer. And the other article I chose, it was more on nonverbal communication and accommodation. But how much do we have time? I have a few minutes. I'll briefly go over this one. I thought I was really excited when I found an article on Grey's Anatomy. I don't know if anyone else watches that. But yeah, it's conducted in 2013 by Jason Mickle, Cheyenne McGuire, and Shelley Gross Gray. And they wanted to analyze communication accommodation in a fictional environment, so a drama TV series. And it does go alongside, and yours isn't fictional, but it is about the interactions with physicians and patients, and the amount of convergence and divergence that they experience. But and they want to use this study for doctors to be able to work better with patients. That's what the results, they wanted to come from the results, which I thought it was kind of odd, because if these shows are scripted, then the doctors are just learning from the script writers, unless I missed something, but that's kind of what I got out of it. And maybe the ideas of it, the nonverbal communication, that it was interesting to read about, but I didn't really I thought they could have done a little better. So one of the research questions was how nonverbal actions distributed among the parties. How are nonverbal actions distributed during doctor-patient interactions, and how frequently do doctors converge from patients in the nonverbal communication? So most of the time, the doctors control the conversation. I think that's what you came to find out too, and it's a lot. It was kind of interesting to see all the aspects that goes into a nonverbal study or content analysis. They had to narrow it down a lot from. So what they ended up coming to was. So talk time and pauses, interruptions, simultaneous speech rate, eye contact, smile, laugh, nodding, and gesturing. That's all nonverbal stuff that maybe doesn't come to mind first when you're thinking about accommodation. Because like I was saying earlier in the presentation, we often overlook the nonverbal aspects, and that's why it was a big addition to the theory. It broadened the scope a lot. And yeah, so I'll wrap it up with that. Does anyone else have any questions? Dr. Bell?
No more questions. I like how you guys covered the article. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you guys.
Communication accommodation theory.
I do have an announcement that I want to make to the class in relation to these next couple weeks and your assignments. There's one thing I want you guys to keep in mind. If you remember at the beginning of the semester, I said that you will have a final video assignment that you need to do. You guys remember that video assignment I kind of talked about briefly? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, and so that assignment is due. It's called the video assignment,